Okay, so if you're navigating the world with young children, you know that feeling, right?
Oh, yeah.
That moment when, I don't know, something seemingly simple just, well, it spirals into a full-blown meltdown.
Mm,
Or maybe a little disagreement suddenly becomes this huge power struggle.
totally. Happens all the time.
And those are the moments, aren't they? The ones that just utterly drain your patience. You
Yeah.
feel completely depleted, maybe even wondering, like, am I doing something wrong here?
It's a common feeling.
Well, today, that's exactly what we're diving deep into, navigating those really challenging moments.
Right.
And our mission, with this deep dive, is to take this really practical guide we found
Mm-hmm.
on managing these emotional storms and, pull out the absolute most important bits of knowledge.
The core stuff.
Yeah, the core stuff, and maybe some surprising insights, too. Think of it as, I guess, a shortcut to feeling more informed and, actually equipped.
And I think maybe we could start by inviting you, the listener, to perhaps shift your perspective just a little bit.
Okay. How so?
Because really understanding the true nature of a tantrum, what it actually is, well, that's the first and honestly the most crucial step.
To responding differently.
Exactly. Corresponding in a way that's not just different, but way more effective in the long run.
Okay, let's unpack that then. This first big idea you mentioned, that tantrums aren't really bad behavior or defiance,
Mm-hmm.
because, man, it can feel like defiance sometimes. But the material we looked at paints, a very different picture.
It really does. And I think one of the most fascinating points in our guide is exactly that. A tantrum isn't really an act of defiance.
Sure.
It's more like a child just completely overwhelmed by these huge feelings they literally don't have the tools to express yet.
So they're not trying to be difficult.
Not consciously, no. You're not seeing a naughty child. You're seeing essentially their nervous system in distress.
Nervous system in distress.
Okay. Yeah, think about it like this. When a child gets that overwhelmed, their logical brain, the prefrontal cortex, it basically just goes offline.
Uh-huh.
They're operating from a much more primitive emotional part of the brain. So trying to reason with them then,
Pointless.
it's kind of like trying to have a really sophisticated debate with someone who just woke up from a really deep sleep. It just won't work.
Okay, that's a really helpful image.
And that is the aha
Mm-hmm.
moment, right? It's not personal. It's communication.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
That reframing, yeah, that feels incredibly powerful. But, okay, let's be real. Staying calm when that's happening in front of you,
Yeah.
that feels almost impossible sometimes when you're right in the thick of it. Remember that feeling we talked about, being totally drained?
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard not to react from our own emotional brain, too.
It absolutely is hard. And that's precisely why this resource puts so much emphasis on the parent's calm presence being paramount. It doesn't just help you stay grounded. It actually acts as a literal guide for your child.
Yeah.
It helps their intense emotions start to regulate.
How does that work, biologically?
Well, you're essentially activating their mirror neurons.
Yeah.
You're showing them non-verbally how to regulate themselves. Your calm literally acts like a thermostat.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, helping bring down the emotional temperature in the room. For both of you, really.
Okay, so practical tips. The guide mentions some.
Yeah, simple things like consciously take a breath. Maybe even tell yourself, breathe,
Mm-hmm.
drop your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
We hold so much tension there.
Mm-hmm.
And speak slower. Use a lower tone. The goal isn't necessarily to control their behavior in that second.
Right.
It's to model self-control for them. That's the key.
Okay, so step one, we managed to stay calm somehow. Or calmer, anyway.
Progress, not perfection.
Right. What's the next step, then, in helping them through it? The source mentioned something about giving language to the feelings.
Yes, exactly. And this is where you literally just say what you see, keep it simple. Like, wow, you look really frustrated because you wanted that toy. Or, it's really hard to stop playing when you're having so much fun, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
This simple act does a couple of things. First, it helps the child feel incredibly seen, understood in that moment of distress.
Which must feel huge to them.
Totally. And maybe even more importantly, long term, it equips them with the actual vocabulary.
Ah, so they can use words next time.
Right. Words to express those complex feelings.
Yeah.
Instead of, the meltdown, you're building their emotional literacy piece by piece.
It's so tempting to jump in and explain why they can't have the toy or why throwing it is wrong right in that moment.
Oh, the urge is strong.
Yeah. But the source seems really clear. Don't reason or lecture mid-tantrum. Why is that impulse, even if it's well-meaning, so, like, ineffective?
Well, it goes back to that offline brain thing we talked about.
Okay.
When a child is really in the throes of it, their brain literally isn't wired up to process logic or absorb a lecture. It just can't.
So it just bounces off.
Or worse, it adds more fuel to the fire. It
Yeah.
can feel like criticism or pressure, which often just escalates things further.
Right. Okay.
So the advice is pretty clear here.
Yeah.
Just kind of wait it out calmly, be present, but don't engage in the argument.
And then
Then, once they're starting to come down, then you can offer comfort, reconnect. The connection and any teaching happens after the storm has passed, not during.
Okay. So we've talked about responding in the moment, but I mean, the dream scenario for any parent is fewer tantrums to begin with, right?
Absolutely. Prevention is key.
So what are the main proactive strategies? What did the source really lean into for that?
Well, a really key insight, I think, is understanding just how much toddlers and young children have this deep, innate craving for control, a sense of agency.
Ah, okay. Makes sense. They don't control much in their lives.
Exactly. So you can actually reduce tantrum frequency quite a bit just by giving them small, controlled choices throughout the day.
Simple stuff.
Really simple stuff. Like, do you want the red shirt or the blue shirt? Or, okay, one more push on the swing. Or are we ready to go home now?
Mm-hmm.
These little choices, they empower them. They make them feel heard. And it often significantly reduces resistance when it comes to, the bigger non-negotiables.
You're giving them agency where it's safe and appropriate.
Precisely.
Now, it also feels like the whole approach to dealing with upset kids is shifting a bit. I keep hearing about time-ins instead of the traditional timeouts.
Yes, that's a big one in modern parenting philosophy.
What's the core difference there, and why is it seen as maybe more effective?
Well, it's a pretty fundamental philosophical shift, actually. Traditional timeouts often involve isolating the child when they're upset.
Right, sending them to their room or a naughty step.
Yeah. And the potential downside there is that it can inadvertently make them feel abandoned or even punished precisely when they're feeling overwhelmed and needing connection the most.
Oh, okay, I can see that.
Time-ins, on the other hand, they involve staying near. You might sit beside them, maybe just breathe with them, maybe offer a hug if they want it.
So you're present.
You're present. And the core message you're sending is something like, your big feelings don't scare me. I'm right here for you. We'll get through this together.
That sounds like co-regulation.
Exactly. It is co-regulation. You're helping them regulate their big feelings by being that calm, stable presence. You're showing them they aren't alone with these scary emotions.
That makes a lot of sense. But okay, even with all this empathy and connection, boundaries are still important, right?
Oh, absolutely vital. Can't skip those.
So how do you set those clear, consistent limits when emotions are running high without just shutting the child down or making it worse?
Yeah, it's a balance. Our source really emphasizes that clear, consistent boundaries actually make kids feel safe. They need that structure.
Okay.
So the approach is often described as being kind but firm.
Kind but firm. Examples.
Sure. Simple, direct statements like, I won't let you hit me, or you're clearly upset, and that's okay, but throwing toys is not okay.
So you validate the feeling but not the action.
Exactly. You acknowledge the emotion, but hold the line on the unacceptable behavior. Children really need to understand what's acceptable and what isn't, even, or maybe especially, when their feelings are big and messy.
It gives them a clear framework.
Yeah, allows them to feel secure within those defined limits.
Okay. So fast forward. The storm has passed. The child has calmed down. What happens then? Do you just sort of move on, pretend it didn't happen? Or is there more to it?
No, that after part is actually fundamental. It's crucial for building that long-term emotional intelligence we talked about.
And the connection.
And definitely for strengthening your bond. So once the child is calm, regulated, that's the prime time to briefly talk through what happened.
How would that sound?
Well, the material suggested something simple like, wow, you were really mad earlier when the TV show ended. That was tough. What could we maybe try next time you feel that angry?
So you're problem solving together.
Yes. You're helping them process the event, understand their feelings better, and maybe even brainstorm some concrete strategies for next time. It really reinforces that connection and teaches valuable life skills.
And thinking again about prevention, being proactive.
Yeah.
Are there common, trigger zones we should maybe be planning ahead for? Things that reliably set kids off?
Oh, definitely. The guide highlights some really common ones.
Yeah.
The tantrums are just far more likely when kids are, the basics. Tired,
Yeah.
hungry,
Highways.
overstimulated, Or, and this is a big one, in the middle of a transition.
Transitions, leaving the park, ending screen time.
Exactly. Those shifts from one activity to another are often flashpoints. But knowing this lets you be incredibly proactive.
How so?
Simple stuff, really.
Mm.
Always having healthy snacks on hand,
Mm.
prioritizing naps or quiet time, giving really clear, predictable warnings before transition.
Like the classic 5 more minutes.
Yeah. Okay, 5 more minutes of playing, and then it's time to clean up. Those kinds of predictable cues can go a remarkably long way in preventing meltdowns before they even start.
Okay, this is all really helpful practical stuff. But let's bring it back to the parent, to us. What does all this mean for you, listening right now, for us navigating these really intense moments? Because, let's be honest,
Yeah.
we're not always going to get it right. There will absolutely be days we feel completely depleted again, days we yell, days it just goes wrong.
And you know what? That is probably the most crucial final message from this material. Give yourself grace. Seriously,
It's okay not to be perfect.
it's more than okay.
Yeah,
You are not going to handle every single tantrum perfectly. Nobody does. It's impossible.
right.
What truly matters, what the research really supports, is your overall consistency, your presence, your genuine effort to connect and meet your child where they are, even when it's messy.
So it's the trying that counts, the general direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe the most powerful reframe that came out of our source material was this. Tantrums don't actually mean you're failing as a parent.
Oh.
Often they mean your child feels safe enough with you to let all those big, scary feelings out. They trust you enough not to hide them.
Wow. Okay, that lands differently, thinking of it that way.
It's a big shift, isn't it?
Yeah. So the core message kind of that we're taking away today, it's that tantrums are mostly communication, right? Not defiance.
Primarily communication of overwhelm or unmet need, yes.
And approaching them with as much calm and connection as we can muster. That's transformative for both us and our kids. It might even, I don't know, replenish our patience a bit.
I think it can, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it changes the dynamic from a battle to, well, support.
Yeah.
And if you can consistently apply these strategies, even imperfectly, remember,
Right.
you're not just getting through the hard moments, you're actively laying this incredibly powerful foundation for your child's emotional resilience down the road.
And building a stronger relationship too.
Absolutely. A deeper, more connected relationship for years and years to come.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening to kind of mull over this week.
Yeah.
When you really lean into trying to understand your child's big feelings rather than just, reacting or trying to shut them down, what new insights about their inner world, about who they are, might you actually uncover?
That's a great question to sit with.